advanced program, something very different.
An opportunity to reduce your sentence considerably.
And possibly play an important role in returning the human race to the surface of the Earth.
No license, no prints, no warrants.
What are you talking about 5 cops like you with just into the eyeballs? What year is this?
What year do you think it is?
1996.
That's the future, James. Do you think you're living in the future?
I'm simply trying to gather information to help the people in the present trace the path of the virus.
We're not in the present now.
This is a place for crazy people.
I'm not saying you're not mentally ill. For all I know, you're crazy as a loon.
The army of 12 monkeys, they're the ones that spread the virus.
Monkeys.
You've been living in a meticulously constructed fantasy world. That world is starting to disintegrate.
Have you become addicted to that dying world?
No, sir.
He needs help.
You think I'm crazy when people start dying next month? I don't belong here.
You're here because of the system.
I know some things that you don't know.
Yes, my son.
You sent me to the wrong year. You're certain of that?
Science ain't an exact science.
You had a bullet from World War I in your leg, James. How did it get there?
I don't know.
You're a trained psychiatrist. You know the difference between what's real and what's not.
You said that I had delusions. You said you could explain.
I'm trying to.
I want the future to be unknown.
I can help you. Get you out.
We're all monkeys.
The thing you take, we live on your ground.
They're watching you. I just want to do my part to get us back on top in charge of the planet.
Hello YouTube, Film Buff 06 here, coming your way with my final movie review for 2018, which is going to be of the 1995 mind-bending dystopian neo-noir time travel science fiction thriller classic 12 Monkeys, which was a loose remake of a 1962 French short film by Chris Marker titled La Jetée, was in turn recently remade for the small screen by Sci-Fi, was distributed by Universal Pictures, was written by David Peoples, who helped to co-write Unforgiven for Clint Eastwood, and the original Blade Runner for Ridley Scott, and his wife Janet, was directed by Terry Gilliam, stars Bruce Willis, Madeleine Stowe, Brad Pitt, who not only won his first Golden Globe for his role in this film, but also received his very first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Christopher Plummer, David Morse, Christopher Meloni, and Frank Gorshin, aka the Riddler himself, from the classic 60s Adam West Batman television show, and tells the crazy, mind-bending Twilight Zone meets Terminator-ish story of a convict in 2035 Philadelphia named James Cole, who, with the assistance of an attractive psychiatrist named Dr. Catherine Rayleigh, is sent back in time to the early 1990s to try and find build an ISIS-esque renegade terrorist cult called the Army of the 12 Monkeys, led by Jeffrey Goins, the psychopathic, fanatical son of a Nobel Prize-winning scientist who are believed by the rest of the world to be responsible for the spreading of a deadly virus that has managed to completely wipe out most of the world's population. So, what are my thoughts on 12 Monkeys after having finally seen it for the very first time this year? Do I think it holds up incredibly well today as it did when it came out back in 1995? Abso-freaking-lutely. Even despite my wish that the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie should have been at least 95% instead of 88%, I can clearly see why it has been held in very high regard as not just one of Terry Gilliam's best films, not just one of the best science fiction movies ever made, but also one of the very best movies to ever come out of 1995 in general, which without question was already such a beyond fantastic year for film at that time, with other great classics besides this, such as Jumanji, Babe, Seven, The Usual Suspects, Heat, and especially Toy Story, because 12 Monkeys is an absolute freaking masterpiece. And there are actually, honestly, not enough superlatives for me to describe how much this movie completely blew me the fuck away on an intellectual level. Whilst I can sort of see where some of the critics are coming from when they say that the story to this film is a little bit overly complex and confusing on surface level, I still found it surprisingly easy enough to follow as it was. I mean, in terms of concept, it is really fucked up, but yet fresh, original, clever, and creative. Almost similar in a way to that of Inception. Consistently keeps you on your toes, never fails to leave you on the edge of your seat and leave you guessing, and is unafraid to really engage your brain and make you think about all the thought-provoking, thematic and conceptual ideas that it does such a great job of conveying to you about what is real about our world, what is not real about our world, the nature of both sanity and insanity, and what could possibly happen to us in the future if we are not careful and or choose to be ignorant about the consequences. And all of that is 110% down to one of the most excellently written and most thought-provoking screenplays I have ever heard of for a sci-fi film, courtesy of David and Janet Peoples. Terry Gilliam, my man, you should give yourself a richly well-deserved pat on the back for not just showing a fierce combination of guts, determination, and self-faith that is sadly severely lacking in most Hollywood filmmakers nowadays, by not bowing down to test audiences and not changing a single thing about your personal vision for this movie, but also for the quirky yet masterful and flawless way you directed this movie. Roger Pratt's cinematography for this movie is just incredible and fantastically brings to life this unbelievably visceral, gritty, earthly, almost Gotham City or Blade Runner-esque dystopian vision of what Philadelphia might potentially end up looking like in the mid-2030s. The editing, the set design, the costumes, the visuals, and the practical effects all help to make the film look fantastic. Paul Buckmaster's score is easily one of the quirkiest, most different, unique, haunting, and atmospheric scores I have ever heard in a mainstream science fiction film. The acting from everyone involved is a freaking plus across the board, and especially from the two standouts at the top of their freaking game, being Bruce Willis, who not only proves to us that he can act if he put in enough of the effort to effectively carry a film on his own, as opposed to just sleepwalking throughout a film for a paycheck, which he sort of sadly does nowadays. Not only gives easily one of, if not the best performance of his career in this movie as James Cole, but also does a brilliant job of conveying the vulnerability and growing uncertainty throughout the film of this otherwise rather childlike, traumatized, messed up, and yet oddly sympathetic and tragic individual as to whether or not he is going insane, whether or not he is just imagining all of this in his head, whether or not he is actually the one indirectly responsible for dooming the human race in the future in the first place, and thus the one who sets all of the events in this film in motion. And whether or not there is actually something secretly sinister going on behind the scenes that he and the audience doesn't know about. And Brad freaking Pitt, who not only well and truly deserved his Oscar nomination for his scene-stealing performance in this movie, not only firmly put his own name on the A-list star map for the very first time with this and 3 other movies, i.e. Interview with the Vampire, Legends of the Fall, and Seven, but also eerily reminded me of John Sims' Master from Doctor Who, as well as Heath Ledger's iconic take on the Joker from The Dark Knight, with his deliciously manic, demented, psychotic, creepy, off his fucking rocker, and rather unsettling performance as Jeffrey Goins. Also, Madeleine Stowe, I thought, was great as Dr. Catherine Rayleigh, who initially starts out just as skeptical as her asylum colleagues as to whether or not Cole's ominous warnings about the future are true, but then essentially becomes Cole's love interest as she starts to gradually believe more and more in what he is saying throughout the film. Christopher Plummer was also great as Dr. Goins, the rather benign scientist who created the deadly virus in the first place, as is David Morse as Dr. Peters, who also turns out to be the surprise antagonist of this movie at the end, which I'm briefly going to get into in a moment. And it was awesome to see Frank Gorshin outside the Riddler costume and taking things much more seriously for a change in a pretty substantial cameo role as one of the main asylum doctors. The twist ending in which, major spoiler alert, it turns out that the army of the 12 monkeys are actually an extreme group of animal rights activists who just wanted to release caged zoo animals and thus had no direct involvement whatsoever with the virus epidemic, as we are initially led to believe throughout the rest of the film up to this point, and that it was actually Dr. Peters who actively performed the deed himself by being the mysterious traveller by airplane to 8 different listed areas around the world where the virus spread, as well as the desperately tragic and heartbreaking revelation that the person James saw being gunned down at the airport when he was a child was actually himself in disguise. In other words, as part of a paradoxical predestination time loop, he inadvertently fucked up his own childhood without even realizing it. Is just such a perfect and brilliantly well thought out ending to this movie that literally made my jaw drop and just pulls the rug out from under your feet in a way that is going to stick with you for days after you've seen this movie. In conclusion, what else honestly is there for me to say about 12 Monkeys that hasn't been said already? Is easily one of the very best movies of 1995. It ranks right up there with the likes of Star Wars, Alien, Blade Runner, 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Matrix, Looper, and Back to the Future as one of the best science fiction films ever made, as well as right up there with the likes of the Monty Python films, The Fisher King, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and Brazil, as one of Terry Gilliam's best directed films. It honestly blows my mind to think that this is a 2-hour and 9-minute long movie that feels like it flies by at only just a full hour. It is brilliantly written, brilliantly executed, brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted. Everything that went into the making of this movie, from Universal patching things up with Terry Gilliam in order to make amends for what happened with Brazil, to Gilliam's thankful determination not to listen to what test audiences had to say about the final cut at the time, and to keep his personal vision for this movie intact, was just all brilliantly well done across the board. It is honestly hard to fault this movie's massive contribution to the dystopian science fiction genre, as well as how it essentially helped inspire both Alfonso Cuarón and M. Night Shyamalan to respectively make Children of Men and The Sixth Sense in very much the exact same way that Heat obviously helped inspire Christopher Nolan to make The Dark Knight. I cannot fucking highly recommend enough that you go and check out this masterpiece as soon as you can if you're into time travel movies like Back to the Future, if you're into sci-fi in general, if you're a Bruce Willis fan, a Brad Pitt fan, or a Terry Gilliam fan, or if you're someone who is into the utter art of filmmaking in general. And since I honestly have a genuinely good feeling that I'm going to love and appreciate this movie all the more upon several rewatches after I've uploaded this review, there is honestly abso-fucking-lutely no question that I'm going to give 12 Monkeys my overall awesome fucking tacular and perfect rating of 10 out of 10. Now, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below, and please let me know your thoughts on 12 Monkeys, as well as let me know what your personal favourite Terry Gilliam film or personal favourite time travel movie is. Plus, feel free to subscribe to my channel as always, as well as go to my channel page and click on the little bell so that you get all of the notifications and updates from my channel via email. And also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to join my Facebook group page, as well as follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And until my next video, and first of 2019, which is going to be my review of the classic 1978 animated feature film adaptation of Watership Down. Do take care, everyone. Happy New Year for tomorrow, and see you guys in January 2019.